Hello everyone, Daryn Wood here. So today I'm going to talk about the theory that Bran Stark is actually all the Bran Starks throughout history, and that he's been influencing the past since the very beginning. Honestly, it's a theory that makes my brain hurt just thinking about it, so for this video, I've tried to assemble it in a way that makes it easiest to understand because it's a mindfuck. So basically, what this theory suggests is that because Bran can go back in time and fuck around, that he has assumed the identities of several historical figures and influenced the course of history by whispering suggestions to certain people. Yeah. Some of the theories are pretty damn compelling and some of them are just bananas, so I'm going to try to focus on the most feasible aspects of this concept. So let's start by going over what Bran's powers are as the Three-Eyed Raven and what he's capable of doing that we know of. We know that he can warg into a whole shitload of hosts and either see through their eyes or act through them. Obviously, warging into animals is his bread and butter because it's the easiest, most accessible form of warging because the simpler the mind, the easier it is to take over. He can also warg into werewoods and access their network because all the werewoods left to the north are mystically connected. He not only can see through their eyes, he can use their magic to reach out to certain moments or people. For instance, in A Clash of Kings, he uses a werewood to contact Jon in a dream and save him by warning him of a wilding host nearby. But he doesn't just appear and say, "Look out, wildings!" He appears as a young werewood with his face and 3 eyes, and it seems like he uses the werewood to essentially open Jon's third eye because he touches him with his little branch arm, and then all of a sudden Jon starts having a wolf dream and he sees the wilding camp as ghosts. And up to this point, Jon had barely had any wolf dreams and he didn't really understand them. And then after this, he starts having wolf dreams more often and he's a little more in tune to them. I also think that when Bran wargs into werewoods, he's actually going into them. Because remember in my last video when I said blood sacrifices are how werewoods are made? Well, when Bran has his werewood vision in Dance of Dragons and he sees the Night King and the Night Queen make that blood sacrifice, he actually tastes the blood. Which is why I think the blood sacrifice is like going into the tree, but that's just my opinion. He can also warg into humans, but it's a lot more difficult. He was able to warg into Hodor, but that's because Hodor is simple. No thanks to Bran, but I just need to have a quick cry. In the arms of the angel. But even so, when Bran wargs into Hodor, he's terrified. We actually see an attempt at human warging in A Dance of Dragons, and it's pretty gnarly. When the wilding skin changer, Varamir Sixskins, is dying, he tries to take over one of his friends' bodies, but she freaks the fuck out. She instantly starts convulsing and screaming like, "Get out, get out!" It's like a chaotic, violent fit. She tears out her eyes, she bites her tongue off, and she eventually ends up killing herself, and Varamir is forced to go live on in his wolf One Eye. Fucking asshole. But this scenario opens up a whole realm of possibilities. The fact that it's possible for a warg to transfer consciousness from one living thing to another is pretty crazy. However, it's still a rough process even if it is successful because the warg's mind will be changed by whatever form they take on, because it's not like they're transferring to empty vessels. This isn't like a Cylon uploading their memories to an empty body. This is like Rogue sharing her mind with Carol Danvers and it driving her insane. Side note, this is how people think Jon survives in the books, because the last book ends with Jon being stabbed by the Night's Watch, and with his last dying breath, he whispers, "Ghost." Bran also has the green sight and has green dreams, and this is not like Jon, Arya, and Robb's wolf dreams, because the wolf dreams are happening in real time. They're just a subconscious form of warging, whereas the green dreams allow Bran to see the past, present, and future, as well as go into other people's dreams, like Jojen Reed. And kind of like Melisandre and Makoro, I still don't know if I believe that the Red Priests are actually seeing shit in the flames. It all still seems very dubious to me. But a step above green sight are the green seers, and they were the original wise men of the children of the forest. And not only did they have the prophetic visions of green sight, they also had magical abilities that allowed them to control animals and control nature. And the green seers are pretty rare because while 1 in 1,000 men is born a skin changer, only 1 in 1,000 skin changers is born a green seer. And from what we've seen, it definitely seems like Bran is a green seer, so it's going to be really cool if we get to see him access more of those green seer abilities. So let's get into what Bran can actually do with these green seer abilities. When it comes to seeing visions throughout time, it seems like the past and the present are pretty easily accessible. He just has to know where to go. Sometimes the events just come to him, like in the werewood visions. Sometimes he has to be led there, like when the three-eyed raven shows him his young father. And sometimes he has to recall the moment, like when Sam is like, hey, I think Rhaegar made it official and wifed Lyanna. Can you check that out for me? And he's like, oh, yeah, just 1 second, can I? Yep, you're totally right. Robert's Rebellion's built on a lie. The future, on the other hand, is a little harder to access, only because he can't just pick a moment to go to, because the future hasn't been written yet. So every time he sees the future, it's in like these inconceivable flashes or these vague visions he has to decipher. Like when he sees his father's statue in the crypt before he dies, and like when he sees the Sept of Baelor blow up before it happens. And there's not much he can do with these visions without the right information and resources. It's kind of just like, cool, I have no idea what that means, and I have no idea how that's going to play out, but points for seeing it coming? When it comes to what he can do with this access of time, the rules kind of switch. Like it's easier to influence the present to change the future than go back in time and change history. You know? It seems like he can perceive a possible outcome and then manipulate the circumstances to change the tide. Like he still can't interact with the future because it's the future, but he can use his green sight to influence a certain outcome, like when he reaches out to Jon in his dream and essentially saves his life. Or like when he reaches out to the Night King and gets marked and accidentally gives him a magical all-access pass to Bran, because by doing so, he changes the rules of the impending confrontation, because now the Night King can find him and come to him. But when it comes to the past, it doesn't seem like he has as much control. Jojen Reed and the Three-Eyed Raven made it very clear that the past cannot be changed, that the past is written in ink. But it seems like this isn't necessarily true, because if you recall, Bran was able to get his father's attention in both the werewood vision and at the Tower of Joy. But it's not like he was like, oh, hey dad, do this instead of this. It was more like he called his name and Ned like looked around like he heard something on the wind. So it seems like his presence is active in the past. It's just a lot harder to utilize. Like he can't be seen, but he can be heard. And he can also warg into people in the past like he did with Hodor. And this ability to be present in the past is what sparked this whole theory. So now that we understand what Bran can do, let's dissect this theory, that Bran is all the Brans throughout time. Like, where does this idea come from? This theory took off after the Season 6, Episode 5, Hold the Door episode where... You can do this, Daryn, be strong. Because it seems like Bran went back in time and, like, ruined Hodor's life. So people were like, whoa, wait, does that mean Bran went back in time and changed the past? Or was this all destined to happen and Bran was just observing his role in a set time loop? And this is where it gets really confusing, so stay with me here. Can Bran go back in time, interact with people, and change the course of history like the Flash, i.e. the Flash's mom dies when he's a kid, he goes back in time to save her, and then everything in the future is different? Or is Bran more like a hyper-aware observer of all that has happened and will happen, like Paul Atreides from Dune? I.e. Paul has prescient awareness of the future, he also has the memories of all his ancestors, so he can access the past, consult with it, interact with it, but he can't change what is already written. So all of us Game of Thrones nerds put on our little research caps and went through all that is the Song of Ice and Fire and tried to figure this shit out. And the strongest evidence comes from Bran being connected to Bran the Builder. In the Game of Thrones Season 1 DVDs, there is a History of Westeros extra. And they show an image of Bran the Builder being carried on a platform like he's also crippled. So people were like, oh shit, does that mean they're the same person? But going off the information we have so far, that doesn't really add up, because Bran's not teleporting to the past, he's warging into it. And when he wargs into other people, he can walk. I think it was more so a hint at their connection than proof that they're the same person. Because again, human warging is very difficult and very messy. It's more likely that Bran would appear to people in dreams because then he could talk to them directly. And also, maybe he was using magic to turn up Bran the Builder's magic like he did with Jon. And maybe he's doing that to a whole shitload of people. But continuing on the Bran the Builder connections, there are two passages from the books that are very popular as evidence for this theory. In the first Game of Thrones book, Old Nan's hanging out with Bran, and she's like, I'll tell you the story about Bran the Builder. That one was always your favorite. Thousands of years ago, he built the wall, he built Winterfell, blah, blah, blah. And in Bran's mind, he's like, ugh, I never even liked this story. She's probably confusing me with one of the other Brandons, like she always does. Because apparently, Old Nan confuses all the Brandon Starks all the time. Like, sometimes she talks to him like he's Brandon the baby she nursed. Sometimes she talks to him like he's Brandon, his uncle that got killed by the Mad King. And Catelyn Stark says that Old Nan has lived so long that in her mind, all the Brandon Starks are the same person to her. And people were like, that's a weird piece of information to just add in there. And there's a reason why all of us Game of Thrones nerds pick apart everything George R. R. Martin writes. We're not crazy, okay? It's because he doesn't write things by accident. He puts an insane amount of detail into weaving this web of a story. So like, why even add in that Nan confuses all the Brandons? He had already previously stated several times that she was super old, like we get it, we don't need proof that she's super old. So it seems like a very specific anecdote, maybe written with hidden intentions. The other passage is in A Clash of Kings, where Catelyn's recalling the creation of the Storm's End castle by the first Storm King Daryn. And long story short, King Daryn fell in love and married Olenna, who was the daughter of the sea god and the wind goddess, and the gods were super pissed about it, so they would create storms that would destroy every castle King Daryn tried to build. Catelyn recalls, a seventh castle he raised, most massive of all. Some said the children of the forest helped him build it, shaping the stones with magic. Others claimed that a small boy told him what he must do, a boy that would grow to be Bran the Builder. And again, it's just another instance where a random Bran the Builder fact sticks out. He's a small boy, he's suggesting shit to people. It just always seems like they're trying to connect him to what's currently going on. And with all these random reminders of their connection, people were like, okay, so if he is going back in the past and influencing certain events, then what events throughout history seem particularly fishy? Like as if someone had intervened. And this is where all the theories started spinning out. There are so many. For example, like that Bran goes back in time to build the wall, and then when people ask who built the wall, he just says Bran, thus becoming Bran the Builder, thus becoming the inspiration for his own name, and thus essentially naming himself. And that when he builds Winterfell as Bran the Builder, that he's the one who establishes there must always be a Stark in Winterfell, thus always ensuring his family's place. Another theory is that Bran is actually the last hero who ended the Long Night 8,000 years ago, because he wargs into the last hero and uses his intelligence from the future to find the children of the forest and drive the White Walkers into exile. But he knows he only exiled them, not defeated them, so that's why he keeps going around in the past and trying to set shit up. Another theory that's a little out there but still pretty interesting is that it's Bran who is responsible for tipping the Mad King over the edge and causing him to really lose his shit. Because you know how Bran whispers to people in the past? Some people think Bran tried to suggest to the Mad King that he use wildfire against the army of the dead and burn them all. But by adding more voices to his head, he only ended up further instigating the Mad King's insanity, and all the Mad King took away from it was burn them all. And the last theory I'll bring up today is that time traveler Ghost Bran is responsible for Rhaegar reading that mysterious scroll that changed his whole game up, by either suggesting Rhaegar read a specific scroll or writing a scroll himself. Because as a kid, Rhaegar didn't give a shit about literally anything except books, and then one day out of nowhere, he read this scroll, and then the next day insisted that he start training to become a skilled warrior. So people think Bran was like, hey, Rhaegar, read the scroll about the Azor Ahai prophecy. And then Rhaegar read the scroll and was like, oh my god, it's me. I am Azor Ahai. I need to become a badass immediately. And it's with those warrior skills that he was able to snag Lyanna and conceive the real Azor Ahai. But it's also those skills that allowed him to win that tourney where he gave that rose to Lyanna. You know, the moment where all smiles died. You know, the one that set off Robert's rebellion. That awkward one. And which also fueled him to challenge Robert on the battlefield where he ultimately died. Which sadly I think was also part of the plan. And in addition to these theories, there's about a million other what-if scenarios, but none of this is for sure. It's all very speculative. It's just a crazy, interesting idea to think that Bran could be subtly existing throughout history. Like, what a mindfuck. We all know the Three-Eyed Raven is a big deal, so there's gotta be more to come from him. But in conclusion, the important question to ask is why would little Bran do this? Messing with the past is super dangerous territory, so what does he gain by meddling with history? Well, if this super confusing theory does pan out, the most logical explanation I can come to is that ever since the War for the Dawn, when the White Walkers first attacked, their return has been inevitable. So Bran has been trying to prepare the realms of men for the impending confrontation by influencing all these moments throughout time to create Azor Ahai, to unite the realms of men, and to give men the proper resources they need to defeat the White Walkers once and for all. Whew! You guys still there? So just to wrap it up, Bran has warging and green-seeing powers. These powers allow him to visit the past but not physically go back in time, but he can warg and whisper to people in the past so he can possibly influence potential outcomes. He could have influenced several events throughout history, causing people to associate him with several historical figures and significant events. And if he's doing this, it's probably because he's trying to give humanity its best chance against its inevitable battle with the White Walkers. Okay, that's officially it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was a lot to take in, but damn, super interesting, right? Let me know what you guys make of this theory in the comments, or if you'd like me to do other topics you're curious about. If you like this video, please check out my other one, and if you want to see more, give me a like and a subscribe.